he got some good news for you. Amen. Listen. Hey, everybody, gather near. The doctor's in the house, so lend him your ear. The things he can say might even make your day. He might even help your pain go away. The doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. I'm sure he can tell you just what to do. The doctor is in the house.
Ladies and gentlemen, the doctor is in the house. This is Dr. Ron, host of Dr. Ron Unfiltered Uncensored, and Dr. Ron's Wellness Warriors. Welcome everybody to episode 565, The Dark Side of Shame, and Unpacking what we do. Ladies and gentlemen, today's show will be about the hidden risks of sun avoidance. We'll shed some light on the often overlooked health issue that's casting a shadow over our wellness and our vitamin D deficiency. With the growing emphasis on protecting our skin from the sun's harmful rays, many of us, not me, are staying indoors and slathering on sunscreen. But is our quest for sun safety leading to unintended consequences? Well, let's explore that today. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Professor Peskin for the last 2 weeks. He made this show quite easy. And according to our listeners, we're up 213%. That's how interesting his subject matter is, and how when you approach the subject matter from science rather than from what is politically correct or from advertising, you really pique the listener's interest. I think this last week's show is a classic. I just hope to see and hear during the interview. He has a lot of opinions about what he is based in science, being a graduate of MIT. I keep telling you every week, ladies and gentlemen, that we live in a world where medical error is one of the leading causes of death. That's why we have to be our own CEOs. And we have to use the Socrates method of asking questions and being inquisitive. And we should encourage ourselves and others to ask healthy questions and get healthy answers. Because Socrates told people to question everything. Socrates said, I am the wisest man alive. For I know one thing, and that is I know nothing. So let's question everything that they tell us on the TV and on the mainstream media. Let's become a wellness warrior and take charge of our own well-being. Okay? Really important. And I will try to give you some information that you can use out there. I want to just warn you not to succumb to the next virus, which is coming down quite rapidly, and that is the virus of fear. The virus of fear. Fear of the sun, now the bird flu. But the mainstream media is silent on the PCR test. A court held that the PCR COVID tests were 97% inaccurate and unfit for the COVID purpose. The inventor of that test told everybody it is a test for investigation, not for diagnosis. People that were tested for COVID They used a test that only could be 3% correct. And of course, you didn't hear this on mainstream media, did you? And we told you about this during this pandemic. But now you're going to start hearing it about the bird flu. We're going to be using the PCR test to scare us. Be aware. So I have some things I want to talk to you about today, but on the awareness side, I have to just mention this. We go down these rabbit trails. I want to just throw this out to you. There's articles out there that show that higher cholesterol is associated with a longer life. Now, because most physicians are employed and they get honorariums from drug companies, and most of the studies on cholesterol were performed with drug pharmaceutical money, you don't hear this. But there's science out there that says that your total cholesterol is not a gauge of your heart disease risk. Cholesterol is found all over, ladies and gentlemen. It's used in every cell of our body. It's involved with vitamin D that you'll hear about today. And hear this. You heard it here. Total cholesterol levels. Mortality is highest when your cholesterol is low without exception. And we will probably do a podcast just on this again because of the number of people that are being scared into taking statin type drugs, and they have not really increased lifespan. Why is heart disease still number 2? With millions and millions of people taking statin drugs. Is cholesterol, are statins really heart protective? Maybe high cholesterol is heart protective. These are the questions we have to ask. So we'll go into this next week. I think it'll be a good topic. A lot of articles on this. A lot of articles on statin use. And we've done podcasts on the side effects of statins. One of them being dementia. And you'll hear today, if I can find it, articles that where low vitamin D levels are associated with dementia. Do you think the pharmaceutical companies really want you to be healthy and not being, and they would prefer you not to be on any medications? I don't think so. No, their job is to keep you sick so you keep getting those refills. There are dangers to sun avoidance. Let's start with that. Then number 1 is vitamin D deficiency, because sunlight is a primary source of vitamin D. And we know about bone health, but vitamin D is important for our immune system, as was found out during the COVID scan. It regulates mood. It definitely has effects on mental health. It has a positive effect on mental well-being because lack of sunlight can contribute to SAD, known as seasonal affective disorder. It's a type of depression. Sunlight exposure triggers the release of serotonin. What's serotonin? It's a transmitter associated with mood regulation. You know what it does? During the day, It reduces the production of melatonin, and melatonin is a hormone that induces sleepiness. There's research out there that suggests, not proves, but suggests that insufficient sun exposure may be associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disorders, cancers, especially colon, breast, and prostate. Lack of sun exposure is associated with weakened immune systems. So it's important to know that there are dangers from sun avoidance. We have to balance it. And we have to not slather or breathe in these aerosol sun blockers. And instead of me just talking about it, just go to EWG, Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, and search their approved sun blockers. Ones that do not have oxybenzone and other chemicals that are carcinogenic. And as far as sunlight exposure, there are 159 abstracts on Green Med Info website. Doubling global vitamin D levels could significantly reduce overall mortality. These are just the titles. Reduced exposure to sunlight significantly associated with an increased risk of Parkinson's disease. Inversely related with cancers, 15 of them. The low prevalence of psoriasis among children and adolescents in Southern California may be due to their higher levels of sunlight exposure. And on and on and on. It's not to be demonized. And sunlight exposure has been associated, when it's deficient, as deadly as smoking. Published in the Journal of Internal Medicine. Amazing that it even made the journals. The title of the study was Avoidance of Sun Exposure as a Risk Factor for Major Causes of Death. Conducted by Swedish researchers on 30,000 women. The women were aged 25 to 64, and this study took place between 1990 and 1992. Several things were discovered. Women with active sun exposure habits were mainly at the lower risk level for cardiovascular disease. And non-cancer, non-cardiovascular disease as compared to those who avoided the sun. Now, here's the tricky part. As a result of their increased survival, the relative contribution of cancer death increased in these women. Well, if we live long enough, we're going to have some cancer. It's part of the aging process. So as these women live longer, there was a relative increase in their contribution to cancer deaths. Remember, cancer risk increases with biological age. The longer you live, the higher your risk will be. Increased sunlight exposure increases your longevity. So it would appear to increase your risk of cancer. But it does not necessarily mean that the sunlight exposure is carcinogenic. It's because you live longer. But heart disease is the number one killer, right? Well, we know now pharmaceutical drugs are, but if we go by last year, heart disease is the number one killer. Sunlight reduces the most common cause of this premature death. So even if it increases a little bit the risk of the second most common cause of death, cancer, the net effect is that you're still going to live longer. And non-smokers who avoided sun exposure had a life expectancy similar to smokers in the highest sun exposure group. What does that mean? It means that if you avoided the sun, your risk factor of death is similar to smoking. That's pretty profound. Again, avoid synthetic sunscreens. I mean, think about what I'm saying and look it up and check it out. Check out how sunlight can increase your ATP levels. We talked about ATP and mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cells. They contain these batteries that keep us going like Energizer bunnies. Important for our overall well-being. Some people would even say we need the sun as a form of food. We need it for energy. We need it because it's information, because our DNA communicates with light. And of course, it stimulates the production of vitamin D, provided you have cholesterol. These wavelengths of light. We've talked about the energy medicine, frequency medicine. It really activates a lot of genetic and epigenetic programs in our body. Sunlight may be the reason why we have such massive brains. They may not have evolved without exposure to daily sunlight. So, sunlight is not bad. And what else does sunlight do? Well, have you ever heard of melatonin? It's more than just a supplement for better sleep. It's a natural hormone made by our pineal gland. And it's made in response to darkness. But did you know it also affects our physical behavior and mental changes throughout the day? Because it affects the sleep and wake cycle. It affects body temperature, cortisol levels, blood pressure, mood, brain health, immune function, and sexual function, and may play a role in inflammation. There are lots of studies that show it is anti-inflammatory. And while we're on melatonin, let me just take a little rabbit trail here. You know, I've talked about this before by Dr. Schellenberger, because he has always been a proponent of melatonin and how it can protect against ionizing radiation. In fact, he has written articles about CAT scans. In one recent article, he said that a CAT scan exposes you to the same amount of ionizing radiation as 70 chest x-rays. So he recommends taking 300 milligrams, a couple of melatonin, a couple of hours prior to the CAT scan, to cancel out the damaging effects, or most of them anyway, of the ionizing radiation. Now, I did something here. Let me see if I can find it. Give you an idea. Or maybe so. Okay, so a head CAT scan is equal to 20 chest x-rays. A chest CAT scan, 70 chest x-rays. Abdominal and pelvis CAT scan, 100 chest x-rays. A full body scan, 200 chest x-rays. These are not without risks, though. They can give you valuable information. They can tell whether you have appendicitis or not. They can tell you whether tumors, cancers or not. But there are other effects. Okay, so don't be afraid to take 200 or 300 milligrams of melatonin. As far as I can determine, there's no toxic dose. So melatonin, it's an antioxidant like vitamin C. It's involved with glutathione, a master antioxidant. But it's not only an antioxidant, because it stimulates the production of glutathione. And there's melatonin in our mitochondria, our powerhouses. And that's why we need that sun, that infrared spectrum of light, to trigger that generation and get those batteries going, and getting our energy up. Since we know that most chronic diseases, people have fatigue. And mitochondrial dysfunction is at the root, along with inflammation, of most chronic diseases. That's why when you get out in the sun and get grounded on the beaches, you feel so great. Now, I've talked about melatonin, methylene blue, and moringa, the 3 M's. They really are at the basis of you feeling well and avoiding chronic diseases. So we need our sun, we need our melatonin. And remember, melatonin, it's a natural hormone. Another thing that you don't hear a lot about, we've talked about in the past, our lymphatic system is a drainage system from our brain. Our brain shrinks down about 60% at night. It forces all the toxic material out of our brain. And how does it get out? It gets out through the G-L-Y-M, glymphatic, not lymphatic, glymphatic system. As a side note, that's why it's important when you get up in the morning to have a nice glass of water. Start putting that volume back in your brain. But poor melatonin production results in poor lymphatic function, which means poor brain drainage, and you don't get rid of those waste products. And that can cause, in some people's minds, neurodegeneration. Neurodegenerative diseases include dementia and Parkinson's. And I have to just remind you that melatonin does affect mitochondria. They're the powerhouses. They're the Energizer bunnies. They're in every cell, and the heart has the most per cell. But melatonin plays a role in their health. And optimal functioning of our mitochondria is critical for cell survival and overall health. And that's where the parent essential oils from last week's podcast come in handy. They keep that cell membrane clean and ready to get rid of metabolic waste products and absorb oxygen. So with the proper mitochondrial function, you have optimal health. You see, I mean, the whole system, it's not just one thing. You have to look at it like the engineers at MIT and Peskin look at things as a system. Sunlight, vitamin D, cholesterol, melatonin, batteries, ATP, all, and glutathione. So you don't just replace one. You go to the basis. Parent essential oils. Let your body produce what it needs in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Okay? So there's a lot more research to be done, but there is benefits to taking melatonin, especially when you're undergoing any kind of radiation or radiographic testing. And I think the sleep portion is important because a good restorative sleep is important to our health. But most people don't think about melatonin and sun exposure as reducing inflammation, because we say chronic inflammation affects our mitochondria, and it's the root cause of most chronic health issues. Melatonin may be able to help. You know, they say that sun exposure may be anti-cancer. Well, it might be the melatonin benefits. So we have to support our overall health. One way of doing it is getting adequate sun exposure. So, I mean, I could go on and on about it, and especially mitochondrial melatonin. It's so critical for our health and our energy and preventing disease. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Ron, host of Dr. Ron Unfiltered Uncensored. Just trying to shed some light and maybe interest you into looking into these problems more in depth. Especially don't go slathering any kind of sunscreen on your body. Check with ewg.org. You know, we've been using a lot of sunscreen over the last 30 years, but the incidence of skin cancer has not gone down. And we talked about that last week with Peskin. It's because our cells are unhealthy. We have too much. People are taking fish oils and they boil on our skin and they turn to cancer. So it starts on the inside. And then we add unhealthy, slathering, carcinogenic substances to our skin, thinking that, you know, the ABC agencies are going to help us. They don't help us. Most of them are beholden to the power brokers, which are the people that supply the money. Be careful, be strong. Do not give in to the fear mongers, people that want to have you in fear, and listen to them. You want to stay healthy, turn off the television. I'm not quite serious about that. And there's just so much I could tell you. I've done a lot of podcasts and things that I think I should tell you today, like AirPods. Everything I said 6 months ago is coming true, 8 months ago. They are frying our brains. You know, they look nice. No. Let's just digest what we talked about today. We have inflammation, inflammaging, and inflammofibrosis to talk about. We have tattoos to talk about, how they increase your risk of lymphoma. Hello. Who wouldn't have thought of that? Ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. See you next week, and critical.
Hey everybody, Dr. Ron's finished for today. I hope you got some good wisdom for what the man had to say. If it's all about good health, he's the man you got to see. He has a lot more answers for you. So tune in next week when the doctor is in the house. Or when the doctor is in the house. And let the doctor know what's bothering you. When the doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. And let the doctor know what's bothering you. I'm sure he can tell you just what to do. The doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. When the doctor is in the house. So if you have a pain, call the doctor. If you have a strain, call the doctor. And let the doctor know what's bothering you. Or when the doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. See you next week.